Last question. We've had throughout the time we've done this, we've had some folks, write in and say, ask Bradley about this, ask James
Yeah.
Carville. If I want to get involved in political strategy, I listened to your story about Ed Rendell. Um,
Yeah.
how you got involved in politics. What's your advice to anybody who wants to get involved?
Yeah. Well, so can I tell the story?
Yeah, yeah, we'd love to hear a story.
So, the summer of 19, I'm dating myself and showing how old I am now, but in the summer of 1992, I guess I was 17, 18, something like that. I had just, 18, because I just finished my freshman year of college. And I was working, do you remember the movie, you're too young, the Flamingo Kid? It was Matt Dillon, right. So I had that job in real life. I was the cabana boy at the Sands Beach Club in the summers, getting people iced coffees and, making sure people on the poker game had drinks and all kind of ice and whatever else. Um, and working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. And it's great in the sense that it's all cash, it's all tips, and you really learn how to hustle. But I get a call one day from a guy named Brian O'Dwyer, and I'm a first generation American. My dad was a refugee, so we didn't know anybody growing up. But my dad just had this guy who randomly was a friend who was a lawyer, and Brian was a lawyer for the Carpenters Union of New York City. And Brian's a really nice guy, and he knew that I was interested in politics, and he knew that I didn't know anybody or anything. And he said, hey, I can get you a one-day Carpenter's pass to the convention. Would you like to go? And I'm like, great. So I figured I'd take a day off from the beach club. And if you look in the newspaper, it says convention noon to midnight. Now, I know that in reality, it's 8 p.m. to 11 p.m., right? But I was this sort of super naive kid, so I don't know. So I show up at Madison Square Garden at noon, and nobody's there, right? It's like two guys from Montana running for state rep speaking. The audience is totally empty. But a guy named Ed Rendell, who at the time was the mayor of Philadelphia, was sitting in the stands by himself. I've asked him a bunch of times ever since, like, why do you think you were sitting there by yourself? And he never really knows the answer. But Rendell is a really, really gregarious guy. And so, if there's no one to talk to, he's just talking to the empty chair next to him. And I figured, you know what? He's the mayor of Philly. I go to school in Philly. He's a Jewish guy from New York. So am I. I'll say hello. What's the worst that could happen? Of course, we have a fun conversation because he'd rather have someone to talk to than not. And of course, I'm this fawning 18-year-old, so what's not to like about it? When the conversation's ending, he said to me, are you busy when you got to school? And I'm like, no, not really. He's like, do you want an internship? I said, that'd be great. I said, okay, send me a note, we'll set it up. So I go home, I write a letter. Every day I'm opening the mailbox and there's no reply from the mayor. And what I didn't know then, but I know now, is that correspondence is a black hole of government, right? Everything goes in, nothing comes out. And so I get back to school, and I don't know why I thought this. One day I'm just, you know what? I still really like to do that. I'll go see him. So I got on the subway and went to City Hall. And this is a decade before 9/11. So security then wasn't what it is today. Yeah. I got to not the person that he says, hey, can you get me a cup of coffee or whatever it is, kind of the outer office, which is still pretty far to get. Yeah. I said, is the mayor here? And we think that's a crazy question to ask, right? But I was sort of this young, naive kid, and they kind of realized, nice old ladies from South Philly, like blue hair, and they realized that, and they said, he's a little busy. I said, okay, would you like to leave a note? I said, sure. So I write a note. I get back on the subway, and it hits me halfway in the subway. I'm like, you idiot, you can't just go see the mayor. So I'm like, all right, this is never going to happen. Yeah. I get back to the dorm, phone rings, hold for the mayor. He said, when are you coming to work? I said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I worked for him all through college, and that's how I got started in politics. And so the great thing about politics is the gating point is not that high, right? People will accept you as a volunteer for their campaign. I was an unpaid intern, right? They'll accept an unpaid internship. You can, through hustle and discipline and force of will, work your way into politics. And the thing that I always find on campaigns is, sometimes it's the person who is like a volunteer or super low-level staffer, and they're smart enough to stay every night at the campaign office till 9, 10 o'clock, because that's when the people who run the campaign finally get a break to start figuring out the strategy for the next day, the next week, whatever it is. And if you see the same kid sitting there for 3 weeks in a row, you're like, all right, you can come sit with us while we talk about this and listen in. And all of a sudden, they become part of the inner circle. And so politics is not like having to be a doctor or an engineer or something where you have to have a lot of education or a lot of training. You can really just have a lot of hustle and a lot of hard work and kind of work your way into it. And so that's one of the things that I kind of love about politics. And it's definitely how I got started.
I also think it's really interesting. A lot of people think, you have to follow this formality, but I love that you just showed up and you were like, hey, where's the mayor?
I literally didn't know better. I'm not sure I would do that now, but look, sometimes being naive is really helpful. So I mentioned when I worked in Illinois, I was 29 when I was the deputy governor of Illinois. I oversaw the state's budget operations, legislation, policy, and communication. So every single major function of state government. I had no business being in that job. Rod never should have hired me for that. I was way too young, way too experienced. But one of the things that we got right, and it was only because I was so young that I didn't know better, was we kind of went for a lot of things legislatively and substantively that a more mature me would be like, no, you're never going to get that. That's never going to happen. Don't even try. And because I didn't know better, we tried, and sometimes we got it, right? So all of a sudden, we're getting universal health care for kids, or universal preschool, or raising the minimum wage, or creating open road tolling on the tollway system, or whatever it is, partly out of naivete. So sometimes not realizing what you can achieve goes really far.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I love that story. And thank you so much for your time, guys. Thanks for your questions. And we will post this, and the rest of our team, and hopefully we'll have you at some point. We won't take up as much of your time.
Right now, it was really fun. Happy to do
it. Take care. Thank you so much.
See you guys. Bye-bye.